Why does Darth Vader remain on the dark side? This question has been brought up a lot recently, and I thought I'd tackle this question because there's not a simple answer to this. Human beings are complex, and so is Anakin Skywalker. The reason this question is often asked is because Anakin only turned to the dark side to save his wife Padme from certain death, as Palpatine put it. So in Revenge of the Sith, he turned to the dark side, betrayed all of his values, and then Padme died anyway. So at the end of the movie, the reason why Vader turned to the dark side no longer holds. Palpatine manipulated him. So why stay on the dark side? Why continue to do Palpatine's bidding if he can no longer save Padme? Palpatine promised he could save Padme from death, not bring her back to life. First, it's important to mention what the dark side is. Now, the way I've always seen the dark side was similar to a drug. Force users are blessed with great power, but with great power comes great responsibility. The dark side is like a drug. The lust for power takes over and it's hard to turn back. The dark side feels good. It gives you power and makes you spiral into darkness. It's like an addiction. Once you get just a little bit of it, it's hard to simply turn back. Telling a drug addict or an alcoholic to stop feeding their addiction is like telling someone on the dark side to turn back to the light. Sure, it's possible, but it can be incredibly difficult. Human beings are complex. You can't simply tell an alcoholic to stop drinking alcohol, like you can't simply tell a dark side user to turn back to the light side. This is how I always saw the Force. You have to be willing to resist the temptation, or you will give in and go down the easy path. So with that established, let's take a look at Anakin Skywalker. Anakin was always a good person at heart, a boy filled with love, but he wasn't without his flaws. Anakin always had a desire for power. He blames Obi-Wan for holding him back in Attack of the Clones. In Revenge of the Sith, he is given a seat on the council, but is not granted the rank of master. Anakin also gave in to his emotions rather easily. He killed an entire village of Tusken Raiders, he got married to Padme even though it was against the Jedi Code, and he often let his emotional attachment get in the way of things, like during the Ahsoka trial. All these flaws, for one, made him susceptible to the dark side more than any other Jedi. Anakin had more to resist than, say, Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan didn't share those flaws and didn't have that desire for power. Anakin also felt it was the people around him that were holding him back. He complains that Obi-Wan was holding him back in Attack of the Clones, and also felt delusioned to hate the Jedi, mostly by Palpatine's manipulation. Palpatine told him lies that the Jedi feared him because of his power. It should also be noted that Anakin's lust for power stems from the death of his mother. Anakin feels responsible for the death of his mother. He feels he could have stopped it if only he was more powerful. So come Revenge of the Sith, Anakin freaks out at the thought of his wife dying. Palpatine is aware of all of Anakin's flaws and was able to push the right buttons to turn him to the dark side. At that point, Anakin betrayed everyone he loved or cared about. He killed all the Jedi, betrayed all of his values, and he became a monster that scared Padme, even though he did this all for her. When Anakin starts crying on Mustafar, it's because he's totally aware of what he's doing wrong. He's aware of all the evil acts he is committing, but he's convincing himself he's doing it for a good cause. He's also already tapped too deep into the dark side at this point. He may be thinking he made a mistake, but it's too late to turn back. He's already given too much to the dark side. When Padme tells Anakin she doesn't know him anymore, this infuriates Anakin and only feeds the dark side further. He chokes Padme and almost kills her, the woman he was doing this all for. Again, it's like a drug. Drugs often make you do things you don't want to do, similar to the dark side. Anakin fights Obi-Wan and Obi-Wan beats him. Anakin loses his limbs and is now burned alive. Let's look after the duel on Mustafar. His best friend and essentially brother cut off all of his limbs, left him there to burn, and stole his lightsaber. His wife betrayed him and he was left horribly scarred and disfigured. The only reason he survived was pure hatred, much like Maul. So literally, if he didn't remain on the dark side in that moment, he would have died. Anakin has been a slave his whole life. First, he grew up a literal slave on Tatooine, then he was a slave in a way to the Jedi Order, then for the last half of his life, he was a slave to Palpatine. Palpatine put Vader in this suit of armor, which was a prison for Anakin. So after everything, Anakin finds out that Padme was dead, and at this moment, Anakin is also dead. Now at this point, the question is often asked, why does he stay on the dark side? What reason is there for him to commit himself to a man who manipulated him? First and foremost, Anakin nuked his life beyond repair. As I stated earlier, he actively engaged in genocide, personally murdered children, broken his most sacred ethical oaths, actively supported a fascist dictator and overthrew the Republic, killed his own wife, or so he thought, and murdering his unborn kid was the cherry on top. What life did he have to go back to? His friends were all dead. Any that had survived would have despised him. Worse, he despised himself. Remember how I said the dark side was like a drug? Well, it's simply not the lust for power that lures people to the dark side. It's also emotions like fear, anger, hatred, and pain. When Anakin became Darth Vader, he had too much self-hate to turn back. One of the recurring themes of Darth Vader that carried over from Legends into the canon is that Vader hated what he had become, and that actively prevented him from looking back. Anakin realized that he was the reason Padme died, so he now has too much self-hate to forgive himself. It's like an endless cycle that causes a man to spiral out of control. Anakin realizes what he has become, hates himself for it, and that hate fuels the dark side, and that cycle repeats. It's also important to note that Anakin's new suit always has him in a constant state of physical pain. Palpatine designed it so Anakin would always be in pain, so there's another factor that feeds the dark side along with his hate and anger. The suit is also kinda a magnet for Force lightning. Had Vader ever betrayed Palpatine, Palpatine would easily be able to kill him because of his new injuries and this suit. This is why he died so easily in Return of the Jedi, by simply picking Palpatine up. As time went on, Vader also seemed to push the blame on the Jedi more and more for what he had become. So the longer he spent as Vader, the more he also seemed to hate his Jedi life. So Vader basically hated who he was and who he became. And you can probably see where that downward spiral would go. When Anakin learned that he killed Padme, Anakin was no more. He died the moment Padme died, and Vader was born. We are left with a man with crippling depression who had only one person in the galaxy left. That was Palpatine. So that is why he went on. There was nothing left of Anakin till Luke came along. This is why the notion that Vader might be conflicted about fighting Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan series goes against who he is at this point in his life. Vader hates Anakin Skywalker and wants to kill anything that reminds him of that part of his life. When someone who's not a higher up in the Empire finds out that Darth Vader was once Anakin, he kills them immediately. Obi-Wan at this point in the timeline is one of the few people left who knows who Anakin Skywalker once was, and that infuriates him. Also, Vader largely blames Obi-Wan for what happened. Vader believes that Obi-Wan failed him as a master. It also doesn't hurt that Obi-Wan is the reason Vader is trapped in this suit, which Anakin hates. You could argue that there is no person alive that Vader hates more than Obi-Wan. Anakin refuses in many ways to take responsibility for what happened and blames other people for his fall, and the person he blames the most is Obi-Wan. This is why Luke's love for his father is so powerful. Luke at that point is really the only attachment left to Anakin Skywalker, and Vader simply cannot feed the dark side anymore, and the light finally returns. But anyway, all the reasons I mentioned above are why Darth Vader remained on the dark side after Revenge of the Sith. Thank you everyone so much for watching another one of my videos. Don't forget to unite the Claude Squad, and I will see you guys next time.